Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Pearlman.
Hello. For the next half hour, we are going to be talking about the global water crisis and the crisis of destroying our forests worldwide with my guest, Michael Zelniker. He is a documentary filmmaker, a climate reality project trained climate leader and mentor, and he has created many incredible documentaries, feature films, and mini-series, including The Issue with Tissue, a boreal love story, a 6-part series, as well as his most recent, The Struggle for Mother Water, an 8-part documentary series about the global water crisis. He has received many awards, including the Genie Award from the Canadian Academy, and Best Supporting Actor, Best of the Fest, Stuart Bliss, Best of the Festival, Falling, Cinefest, Sudbury International Film Festival, Audience Choice Award runner-up, and many others. He has also formerly been the co-chair of the Climate Reality Project Los Angeles chapter, as well as a teacher with the New York Film Academy, and has been an award-winning actor and filmmaker. Welcome back to Environmental Directions.
Thank you, Nancy. It's good to be with you.
I always enjoy watching your programs because you truly tell incredible environmental stories, show us incredible sites, show us people doing incredible work, describing to the public what the problems are, what the solutions are. You travel to so many places. Your recent film, The Struggle for Mother Water, you went to 21 countries, were on the road for 219 days, hundreds of locations. How did you decide to talk about water, which you say water is life, water is a human right? Is that because we all need water and water is getting polluted and unavailable?
We say water is life. When we travel to distant planets looking to see if that planet can sustain life, we're actually looking for water molecules for H2O, because we know if we can find water molecules on that distant planet, we know that that planet can or did or will sustain life. As I traveled around the world to these 21 countries, I don't know how many languages, 30, 40 languages, I heard the people I was meeting with over and over and over again make the same declaration: water is life, water is life. And in fact, we open the documentary, each episode, all 8 episodes, open with a series of women, especially because women are the ones who are leading the fight to protect and defend water. Not to glamorize this, but of course, in most cultures around the world, women are charged with the responsibility to ensure that the family, the community has sufficient water, because they're charged with the roles that women often fulfill. And again, not to glamorize that, but women are often charged with the responsibility to make sure the children are cared for, the cooking is done, the washing is done, the cleaning is done. So water is involved in all of those activities. So when water is scarce for one reason or another, because it's contaminated, because of industrial impacts, it's scarce because we're seeing more and more drought on the land. For the various reasons that we see water facing a crisis in all these communities around the world, women are the first ones to be aware that there is a scarcity of water, there's a scarcity of clean, safe water for them to drink, for them to wash with, for them to cook with, and so on. Our documentary, the people who lead the storytelling in The Struggle for Mother Water, is women.
I very much relate to what you say because I support an orphanage in Kenya, in East Africa. And when I first went there, I saw the girls walking 2 miles to the river for water, and it was dirty, polluted water. They didn't have the time for education. They didn't have the resources to make the water clean. I was thrilled that we were finally able to work to get a water well. But this is a major problem around the world, is where are we getting our water? I mean, even here in urban Los Angeles, we're bringing water down 400 miles from the Owens Valley and the Sierras. We don't provide the water from where we are. So it doesn't matter if you're in a developed country or a developing country. Water is so important to life and not always available. We see desertification desertification going on. I recall when you talked about the boreal forests, how important they are, that forests all over the world shouldn't be cut down because we need the watershed. Forests help preserve water.
You raised such an important point, Nancy. Well, first of all, let's go back and talk about women for a second. One of the most stunning statistics that I discovered as I researched preparing for filming was that women and girls spend 250 million hours per day fetching water around the world. That's not 250 million hours per week or per month or per year, per day. I mean, even as I say that, it takes my breath away just thinking about it. Just think about what those women and girls could be doing if they were not tasked with having to find water, which is often, as you said, in a location that is not close to them. They often have to walk long distances, kilometers away from where they are in order to fetch that water. And unfortunately, the reality is in many places around the world, the water they're fetching is contaminated, is polluted. I saw women and girls and children, little children fetching water in horribly contaminated streams. We see it detailed in our documentary. And I would ask them, how does it feel to bring home water that you know is contaminated? And they said, we know. We're aware that this water, this brown, dirty, filthy water is contaminated because we bring it home, we drink it, and we get sick. But we have no choice. This is all there is. Because we cannot live life without water. And this is not only true of we as a human family, it's true of all of life. Plants can't grow, you can't farm your products, you can't farm your crops without water, animals can't survive without water. All of life depends on water. And then going back to the other point you were making about how this is an issue also happening here in the developed part of the world. Another stunning statistic that I learned as I did my research is that by 2030, in 4 years, the need for fresh water is going to exceed what is available by 30%. So in 4 short years, we are headed for a really serious crisis. I don't know if you've heard this before, Nancy, but something I heard frequently as I did research was the saying, the wars of the 20th century were fought over oil, the wars of the 21st century will be fought over water. We've already seen this to be the case, of course. We don't necessarily articulate that the war in Syria, the horrible civil war in the early 2000s and through till recently, over a 20-year period, was caused because there was severe drought all over Syria. And those rural families, those rural communities who depend on water in order to practice agriculture, they had no choice. They had to move into the cities because there was no water for them to farm. And when they moved into the cities, there was no work for them. And that unrest, that civil unrest, eventually led to a horrible civil war where tens of thousands of people were killed. Going back to the issue you raised about our forests and why deforestation and the cutting down of our original forests, our old-growth forests, is such a critical issue, is because there's a relationship between our trees and our plants and rainfall. There is a relationship. The hydrological cycle, the water cycle that we depend on, that produces water, depends on the relationship that is built around the trees that are growing in a particular ecosystem. So when we break that relationship between rainfall, the hydrological cycle, and the forests that support them through transpiration, when we break that relationship, we face the kinds of circumstances we see today where we have extreme drought for months or years at a time, and then we have this new phenomenon that meteorologists call rain bombs, where we can have in 3 days 6 months of rain. No infrastructure can absorb that, can accommodate that. So we're seeing really, really intense weather events, extreme weather events where places are flooded. When I was in Thailand, traveling in the north near the Myanmar or Burma border, they were undergoing severe drought, and all their rivers, all their streams, the water level was extremely low. About 6 months after I left, in a short period of time, 4 or 5 days, they had 6 months of rain. All of their land, all of their farmland, all their villages got washed away. And so even though my documentaries focus on a specific issue like water with the struggle for mother water or the boreal forests, the northern forests that circle the northern hemisphere, we're dealing with trees and forests, there's a larger systemic issue that I try to uplift, and it's the issue that we human beings have severed our relationship to the rest of creation. And the severing of that relationship has led us to the kinds of crises we're facing living now as a human family.
And we certainly need to be more related to the resources and the earth and how it helps us if we take care of it. I wish we had time to talk about every location that you visited, every different place, to inform us what's going on. What did you discover that you were unaware of?
Oh my goodness. So in Colombia, I was in the Amazonas region, which is Amazon part of Colombia. I had the good fortune to meet with indigenous communities there. So that was one of the highlights. I mentioned the Sundarbans in India. This is an extraordinary place with extraordinary people. But it's hard for me to identify just one place. Traveling to these 21 countries, we put one foot in front of the other, right? There's a phrase that I learned in my travels doing the Boreal movie with the First Nations people that I met along the way. And they use a phrase, doing things in a good way. And when you make a documentary like The Struggle for Mother Water, where you're traveling all over the world to all these different locations, obstacles come in the way sometimes, and you never know what's going to work, what's not going to work, until really you're faced with the moment. So I adopted that beautiful saying, doing things in a good way. And what I learned through this experience is when we do things in a good way, the way forward is guided. And that was my experience. I have so much gratitude to the 8 women that partnered with me in territory, in community, who led my way, who guided my way into these communities that we visited, who did the translation, certainly in languages that I don't speak. So we had people who needed to translate. So I had the most wonderful partners along the way who assisted me in ways that without them, of course, it wouldn't have been possible. So I don't know if I've addressed your question, but it would be impossible for me to highlight just 1 or 2 or 3 places. Everywhere I visited had its own beauty, its own surprise, its own quality, its own humanity, its own grace.
We're talking about availability of water, too much water, not enough water, but let's talk for a moment about the polluted water, because I recall when I was in Borneo, I heard that the tourist resorts were dumping raw sewage into the water that the indigenous villagers used for drinking, cleaning below them. I recall here even in Southern California when I trained for the triathlon and swam out in Santa Monica Bay to raw sewage outfall right here in Los Angeles area. Polluted water comes from so many different places, as well as factories, as well as other kinds of pollution that we don't even see. The microplastics that come down into the rivers and the creeks and go into the oceans, very harmful to the wildlife and eventually humans. Also, is something that people don't see and is very, very important that we recognize that what we are doing has a big effect from miles and miles away from a water source.
Yeah. We've allowed ourselves to be persuaded to believe that the things we depend on for our very survival, the trees for oxygen, plants and trees for oxygen, water for life. Without water, there is no life. We've allowed ourselves to be persuaded that these should be turned into commodities for commercial profit, rather than treated with the respect, the reciprocity, the generosity that they deserve, because they literally provide us with the breath of life and the ability to live. And yet we've allowed the system of capitalism as we practice it today to allow us to believe that we should turn these into commodities for commercial profit, rather than treating them with the respect, with the kindness, with the relationship that most indigenous peoples that I've met with and talked with view them, which is as family. And so when I think about how we've turned these elements that we depend on for our very survival, literally without trees and plants, there's no oxygen, no life. We've allowed ourselves to believe that turning them into commodities for commercial profit is the right way to go. And to me, it's no different than trading your brother or your sister, allowing them to be traded into prostitution. It's not different. These are members of our family. And one of the great things I learned in my travels as I met with various indigenous peoples from all the different countries I traveled to is they see these other elements of creation as members of our family. And they should be treated with the kind of respect, the kind of generosity, the kind of reciprocity that they provide us with. Because as Elder Dave Corshane said to me, me, an Anishinaabe elder from Manitoba in Canada. He said, what we do to the land, we do to ourselves. And so when we go around polluting the land, the water the way we do, allowing industry to pollute the land, to pollute the water the way they do, when we allow these things to happen, what we're doing to the land, what we're doing to the water, we're doing to ourselves. We seem to have disconnected from that understanding.
You have certainly helped us understand all of these issues better in your beautiful documentary series, The Struggle for Mother Water, The Issue with Tissue, A Boreal Love Story. We will talk more with you, Michael Zelniker, filmmaker, when we return in a moment.
Environmental Directions with Nancy Pearlman continues with further discussion of the world's critical ecological issues. For more information, you may call 310-559-9160 or go to www.ecoprojects.org. Now, here's Nancy.
I'm speaking with Michael Zelniker. He is a documentary filmmaker. His most recent documentary series is The Struggle for Mother Water. And we've been talking about the lack of water, the lack of clean water, polluted water, and the relationship of exploitation of the resources, as you showed in your documentary about the boreal forests, how they're being cut down just for tissue paper when we should be using recycled material for that kind of use, and how important it is to maintain our natural ecosystems, but the exploitation not just of logging, but of mineral exploitation. There's a big battle in the Amazon among the indigenous people with companies that were drilling for oil and polluting their water that they depended upon. You could do so many stories in so many places, and you did go to a lot of different places. Was there any particular story that in your research, when you were doing this film, surprised you?
Well, when you take on a project like this that has such a large scope, and the reason why I ended up traveling to 21 different countries, trying to uplift as many stories as I could, was because I didn't want anyone to watch this documentary and be able to say, oh, it's only happening over there, or it's only happening because of this. The dimension of the water crisis is so extensive, and I wanted to try and uplift as many of them as I could. I would say that when I traveled to the Sundarbans, which is the largest coastal delta in the world, it's on the southeast side of India into Bangladesh. When I was there, it was 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or maybe a little warmer. Because it's a coastal delta, it was 60-70% humidity. As you can imagine, they have no air conditioning there. To me, this is a place that's no longer habitable. And we see this happening more and more. What happened last year here in Los Angeles? January 7th, the fires that we had here. Why? Our rainy season begins in October. On January 7th, we had not had a drop of rain. So the landscape was like tinder. It was so dried out. And then these extreme winds came up. These are events that are increasingly happening, these extreme weather events, because of all the carbon we're pouring into the atmosphere. All the carbon we're pouring into the atmosphere because of all the fossil fuels that we continue to use, even knowing that burning these fossil fuels is warming the planet. And as we continue to warm the planet, of course, we continue to provoke these kinds of extreme weather events. And yet, the media and the coverage we receive about these events, I remember somebody saying right after the fires here in Los Angeles, they said something like, nature has turned itself against us. And I so disagree with that. I so completely disagree with that. To me, what's happening on the planet today, with various areas becoming uninhabitable, with the frequency of extreme weather events happening, with farmland, it's no longer capable of producing crops because there's no longer enough water to irrigate the land. And I saw this everywhere I traveled, in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in Mexico, all over. Wherever I traveled, I saw the same issues happening. So going back to our fires here last year in Los Angeles, we had no rainfall 3 months into our rainy season. The winds came up. And for me, living here in Los Angeles now for 40 years, for the first time, my wife and I turned to each other and said, where we live, it's now a risk to live here. We're now facing the reality that so many people around the planet are facing, that where we live is no longer safe to live.
I'm wondering if the whole earth is safe to live anymore with what we are doing to it. That is something that we must help take care of all over the world. You mentioned Los Angeles, you mentioned Southern California. I am totally opposed to bottled water. It's uneconomical, it's unecological with the plastic bottles. I once took a trip up the LA aqueduct and saw a bottled water company literally take the water straight from the aqueduct that goes into our faucets and selling it at an expensive rate that people didn't need to do. And our regular faucet water is tested all the time, and yet the public relations people, the ads, the media have convinced us that everything is safe. They've convinced us that power plants that have radioactivity, radioactive water, are safe. We don't have to worry. Are we going to get to the point where people will acknowledge, as you pointed out, that we are doing horrible things?
Going back to the point I was trying to make a minute ago, Nancy, I sometimes hear in the climate movement, I sometimes hear in the environmental movement, Mother Nature is punishing us because of what we've done to her. I don't subscribe to that way of thinking. I believe what the Earth is telling us is we are destroying her ability to take care of us because that's her nature, right? The Earth produces life. It creates life. This is what Mother Earth has done since the beginning of time. Plant life, tree life, animal life, human life, every form of life has been born out of this ecosystem called the Earth. So its predisposition is towards life, is towards creating life. And where we see challenges to the sustainability of life today, it's not Mother Earth punishing us. It's Mother Earth saying to us, you are destroying my ability to take care of you like I've done since the beginning of time.
You have shared these ideas so beautifully in your films. People can see the struggle for Mother Water, the issue with tissue, a boreal love story, and your many other works by simply going to your website, motherwaterfund.org, or going on YouTube, Michael Zelniker. You have a channel there. And they can also go to the film festivals where your films are getting awards.
To be clear, the struggle for Mother Water is not yet out. I just completed work on it, and we're actually about to premiere at the Berlin International Film Festival in February. It will begin streaming or being aired on various broadcast networks soon after, but for now, if people are interested, there is a 6-minute preview up on my YouTube channel, Michael Zelniker, or you can just do a search in YouTube, The Struggle for Mother Water, and the 6-minute preview will come up. They will have an opportunity. The issue with tissue, a boreal love story, well, the feature film version already traveled all over North America and even in Europe, so the feature film version is actually done with its exposure, but we have also a 6-part series that is about to begin streaming on various platforms. So I would say by the end of January, if you do the issue with tissue, a boreal love story search, you'll be able to find it on various streaming platforms. I just want to go back to one issue you brought up, which is the plastic bottle water industry. I can tell you that half an episode, so about 25 minutes of one of our episodes, is devoted to the plastic bottle water industry because it is the consumer element of the water crisis, just like toilet paper was on the issue with tissue. The consumer item, the consumer element of the water crisis story is the plastic bottle water industry. And so those people who are concerned about the fact that somebody is appropriating our water, both from our aquifer and from our municipal water sources, and then bottling it in little pieces of garbage, as one of the activists in our documentary calls it, little bottles of plastic, and then selling it back to us for enormous profits. It's another reflection of how capitalism is not good for people. It's good for a few people, the Elon Musks of the world. They profit greatly from this system of capitalism as we practice it. But the system of capitalism as we practice it is not good for people, and goodness knows it's certainly not good for the rest of creation.
I certainly hope that people do watch your films, because even though I know these issues and I've studied them and I've traveled myself to many places and seen the problem, you have incredible video of locations, you have incredible information that even the experienced environmentalists like myself can learn from and enjoy seeing the beautiful work that you do, and feel saddened that we are having this crisis that has to be dealt with and should be dealt with as soon as possible. You went to Europe, you went to Asia, North, South America, Africa. Is there any one country, one location, one group of people that is doing a better job that we can use as a model?
I would say in every place I went, the people I met with, because I was meeting primarily with impacted, frontline, marginalized communities, literally struggling with the existential reality that they do not have access to clean clean, safe water, that in all those cases, in every case, these are people who are leading courageous, inspiring lives, called by water, called by life to try and overcome the crisis that they're facing.
Here in the United States, in the early environmental movement in the 70s, we were able to establish laws to protect our water, our air, our resources. Unfortunately, the current political environment is destroying some of these laws. They're not being enforced. The regulations are being eliminated, and yet we need that to be able to have clean water, clean air, clean land. What is our future in the next couple of years?
I don't have a lot of confidence in policymakers, in the establishment as it exists today, because what we've seen happen, Nancy, is a larger and larger seat at the table is being taken up by industry. And even where there are strong regulations around water pollution, water contamination, what we see is that a company will pollute an area, be fined, $10 million after making $40 billion polluting the water in order to produce whatever it is they're producing. And because they have a larger seat at the table, that $10 million is just the cost of doing business. So even the legislation we have, the regulation we have, is not sufficient to enforce a future that will remain habitable for human beings. And unfortunately, the reality is, as we take ourselves out, we are going to take out a lot of the rest of creation with us. So my confidence is in the people. And that's who I met on my travels. People who are raising their voices and saying enough is enough.
What is going on with international cooperation and laws?
So in 2010, the United Nations, led by a woman named Maud Barlow and others, they passed a resolution to ensure that it is a human right that all human beings have access to clean, safe drinking water and to reliable, consistent sanitation. Unfortunately, even though that is declared a human right by all the nation states of the United Nations, the reality on the ground is far from that, because each individual nation state governs their own processes. So even where perhaps the most respected large international body in the world, the United Nations, passes this declaration, the reality on the ground is far from that human right being fulfilled, because that resolution is not binding in law. So even all the nation states that sign that resolution and say, yes, we will guarantee that our citizens have access to clean, safe drinking water, the reality on the ground is far from that.
We said earlier that water is life. Water is a human right. There was actually a case in another country that said a river had the rights like a human being. Do we need to see our natural ecosystems receive the same rights as human beings?
I think that's a great process that's ongoing now. There is a river system up in Quebec that's been declared to have the rights of personage, and we're seeing that in more and more places. How that will pan out ultimately, of course, time will tell, but the idea that we give nature the same rights that we ourselves endow ourselves with, even though we don't honor the reality is far from those laws, those declarations, those understandings. But I do believe it is a step in the right direction. But as I said a minute ago, in the end, changes that are required, the changes that we need, are going to be led by the people. I have a lot of confidence based on the experiences I had traveling around the world, seeing the brave, courageous people, inspiring people, determined, as I said, called by life. The need to life drives us to do really courageous things. And when you see people living on the margins, living with the realities of this existential crisis, getting up each day and confronting the crisis that lack of water, lack of access to clean, safe water presents, fighting to gain access, to fight for access. And as I said earlier, in almost all cases, the ones leading the fight are women.
You have tied together in your films multiple issues, because no crisis is separate, whether or not it's protecting the ecosystems and the wildlife, the human resources, the human needs, the animal needs. We're all related.
I do want to say, Nancy, that somebody who has been in this work for so many years like you, to have you say those kind of things about my work, really, it's very, very gratifying to hear, and I really thank you for that. So I just want to close with a quote of James Baldwin's that I heard recently that I think is so appropriate to what I've tried to create with the struggle for Mother Water. And the quote is, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until until it is faced.
You certainly have encouraged us to face it, to see it. You have the visuals, you have the stories, so that we can be moved to take the necessary action. Thank you so much for reminding us that we do need to be connected to nature. And after you've been outside and enjoyed it, you come inside, you watch your beautiful films. Thank you so very much for being my guest.
Thank you, Nancy.
I have been speaking with Michael Zelniker, who is a documentary filmmaker, films The Struggle for Mother Water and The Issue with Tissue, A Boreal Love Story are just some of his excellent work. I'm Nancy Pearlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Pearlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.